Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the Edexcel Paper 1, and we're going to be basically walking through the paper question by question, and I'm going to talk you through how to pass this exam. Okay, so Paper 1 is a fiction paper and you'll be given one 19th century text for this paper. So the timings are as follows. Section A, you have 1 hour to complete that section, okay? And then section B, you have 45 minutes. And so the whole paper is 1 hour, 45 minutes. So for section A, that's where you are given an extract to read. You should spend the first 10 minutes reading the questions and the extract. And then for question 1, you spend about 2 minutes. Question 2, 4 minutes. Question 3, 12 minutes. Question 4, 30 minutes. What you'll notice about the timings there is that however many marks, you double that number to get how much time you should spend on that question. So an easy way to remember the timings for paper 1 is you double the amount of marks it's worth to get how many minutes you should spend on that question. For section B, 45 minutes, as I mentioned, this is your narrative writing question, and it's worth 40 marks, and it's a very chunky question, very important question, so you want to make sure that you spend those 45 minutes on that question. One thing I would recommend is starting actually with the writing question, that section B question, because often students don't finish their narrative writing and they lose marks as a result. So I would recommend starting with that question, but make sure after that 45 minutes you then move on to section A, because obviously you don't want to miss out on those marks either. Okay, so question 1. The key thing for question 1 is to pay attention to the lines, okay? It's only worth 1 mark. However, 1 mark can be the difference between one grade or the other. So make sure you pay attention to the line numbers that they want you to focus on, because if you give an answer outside of those lines, you don't get the mark, okay? But it's a very straightforward question. As you can see there, it's asking you to identify a word, one word or phrase. No explanations are needed for question 1 or 2. Question 2, as you can see, you're given a short extract, and then it's worth 2 marks, asking you to identify 2 things. So in that, for example, they're asking you to identify 2 things which show the area is isolated. So make sure if you use quotations that you are precise, okay? Because they will accept quotes or your own words. But if you, for example, if they're asking for one thing and then you put 2 sentences from the extract, you're not going to get the marks because it's not precise enough, okay? So make sure that your answers are precise. Question 3 is worth 6 marks, and it's also based on an extract. However, you do need to explain for this question, and you should aim to write at least 2 paragraphs. And I would say 2 to 3 paragraphs. Considering the time you have, you don't really have time for more than 3 paragraphs, and it's worth 6 marks. So again, you don't want to fall into the trap of spending too much time on a question and not getting any more marks for that. So 2 to 3 paragraphs. Make sure that you make points about both language and structure, because if you don't, you cannot get more than 2 out of the 6 marks for this question. So that's the key thing here. If you write 2 paragraphs, write one about language and the other about structure. If you write 3 paragraphs, you can mix and match 2 structure, 1 language, or 2 language and 1 structure, as long as you have both of those in there. Question 4 is worth 15 marks, and it's based on the whole extract. Now, the key thing for this question is to make sure you are evaluating. So you show that you are evaluating by using evaluative vocabulary, words like successfully, powerfully, effectively, creatively, skillfully, and they're more than that. You can use aptly, convincingly. But for a reminder of those basic um, five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you can use specs. Okay, specs will help you remember that. Also, for this question, you are looking for how the writer uses settings, ideas, themes, and events. And these are the things that you need to be evaluating. And so when you read your extract, for example, and you're annotating for this question, you're looking out for these things. You don't have to have all four. You could, for example, have 2 paragraphs about settings and 2 paragraphs about ideas. You won't get penalized for that. But this is one of the ways that this question is distinguished from question 3. Okay, question 3 is about language and structure. This question is about evaluating. And so you're looking at slightly different things. So that's what you're evaluating. And you support your evaluation with analysis of language and structure. So it is appropriate to look at language and structure to evaluate language and structure and how it creates a specific emotion, whatever the question is asking you. For example, this question reads, in this extract, there is an attempt to create an atmosphere of confusion. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. And so you would read the extract and consider, does the setting add to this? Do the ideas add to a sense of confusion? Themes, events? It's always advisable to say that the writer is successful in doing this. So for this question, I would definitely advise that you just say that the writer is successful, that they are effectively presenting whatever atmosphere is pointed to in the question, and focus on supporting those ideas, okay? Supporting that evaluation using, again, the analysis of language, or shall I say, evaluation of language and structure. If you only analyze language and structure without evaluation, you cannot get more than 6 marks for this question. So don't fall into the trap of answering this the same way that you would answer question 3. I have a video on question 4 on my channel. I will link it so you can have a look at that video, and I go through an actual question and explain how to answer it and give you an example answer. So make sure you check out that video. I will link it in the description below for you. Okay, the finale of this paper is the writing question. So as I mentioned, you have a narrative writing question. You also have the option of using images as prompts, basically, to help you generate some ideas. So you have a choice of 2 questions. Pick one question. Okay, pick one question. The first thing you need to remember to do is to plan. Take some time to plan your answer, okay? About 5 minutes out of the 40 marks. I do have videos on how to plan for this question. Do this question, as I mentioned, first, so you don't run out of time. If you do start with this question, do not go over 45 minutes. You have time for the rest of the paper. There's a lot of planning that you can do before the exam, including thinking about drafting, a plot, maybe some characters, and then once you get into the exam, you can actually fit some of those ideas into whatever question you're given. So I would advise doing that. Revise your vocabulary before the exam. So maybe 10 to 15 ambitious words that you know what they mean, you know how to use them, and you know how to spell them. Also, think about your structure techniques. For example, using a cyclical structure, using in medias res, and it shows that you are being deliberate in how you're structuring your story to make it engaging. And make sure you leave 5 minutes at the end to read over your story and correct any mistakes. So punctuation is something that you're marked on as part of the AO6 assessment objective for this question. And by you taking that time to read, you will actually think about it as actually adding marks to your work by leaving that time to read, because those corrections that you make, they will factor into the grade that you get at the end. So that's it for my walkthrough of Edexcel Paper 1. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and check out some of my other videos regarding how to actually answer the questions. I have example videos for question 3, 4, and the narrative writing questions as well. So I hope that that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.